Hello, church. Welcome to Midweek Minute with Mike. Freedom without patriotism is cheap liberty. On this Veterans Day, I would like to honor the men and women who have fought for this nation, whether in war or in peace. I thank you, the military veteran, who have sacrificed, who have dedicated, and who have gone courageously to fight for this nation. You have taken up your life to go fight for a nation. You've left your family, and you've gone to fight for us, for your family, and for an entire nation. What makes the military veterans so special is that they put the needs of others ahead of their own. Freedom without patriotism is cheap grace. And if we were to not honor the military veteran for the sacrifices they have made, for the courage that they have gone on to fight for this nation, for the freedoms that we cherish, that would be considered diminishing the value of their sacrifice. So I thank you and I honor you, veteran. There was something that was said that was just as profound as that by a young German pastor back before World War II. And he was persecuted and he was scrutinized by the fascism of an emerging Nazi Germany. His name was Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And he said something very profound. He said, salvation without discipleship is cheap grace. Salvation without discipleship is cheap grace. Our passage today comes from the Gospel of Mark. It's chapter 8, verses 34 and 35. I would like to read it for you. If I can get there, Mark chapter 8, verse 34, it says, "And he summoned the crowd with his disciples, and he said to them, 'If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it.'" Now, the cross and the crucifix at that time was something that was widely understood. It had been around for a long time. The Egyptians and many others had used it well before the Romans had ever popularized it. So, and the disciples would have known as well. But what the disciples did know was the cost of following Christ. See, they didn't understand that that was going to cost them. It was going to cost them their life. They understood this, though, when they saw Jesus take up his own cross at Calvary. Prior to that, though, long before that, Jesus had a teaching the night before he was killed. And Jesus told them that greater love knows no one than this, than one lay down his life for his friend. And since that time, many have suffered death for Christ's sake. Paul taught in Romans chapter 6 that although you might not die physically for Christ, you are to die daily. It's a death that you will die daily because you will need to deny yourself and die to sin. You will die to yourself and die to sin. It's a principle of how we identify with Christ who died for us. But so often we don't consider the cost of this. And Jesus said this in Luke chapter 14, and he warned against not counting the cost of following him and being his disciple. You see, it is costly to follow Christ. You have to pay the price. The price is dying to self and dying to sin so that you may identify with Christ. My fellow Americans, freedom without patriotism is cheap liberty. And if you have not counted the cost of your freedom, you need to do so. And if you have, I call you patriot. And I encourage you, thank your military veterans. But as Bonhoeffer said, salvation without discipleship is cheap grace. Are you counting the cost of your salvation? Are you counting the cost of being a disciple of Christ? Brothers and sisters, if you are, you're a disciple. Go and make disciples, share the gospel, And I call you blessed in the name of King Jesus.